For the final time this season, the focus of this week's edition of Mastodon Spotlight will be basketball. The first half of the program will speak with men's head basketball coach Doug Knoll and review the recently completed season. And in the second half of the program, we'll be speaking with a couple of members from the Mid-Continent Conference. Our show is called Mastodon Spotlight, and it's coming up next. Hi again, everybody. I'm Mike Maas. Welcome to Mastodon Spotlight. Well, as I said a moment ago, the men's basketball season recently completed this past, about a week and a half ago, or almost 2 weeks ago. Our first guest this week is the head coach here at IPFW, Doug Knoll. And Doug, this was a unique season in more ways than one.
Yeah, it sure was, Mike. We learned a lot, and we learned a lot about where we're at, where we're going, and what we need to do to get there. And so hopefully we can apply that now to the coming years. Obviously, we're excited about a bigger budget for scholarshiping. We'll be at the full 13 rides next year, and we'll also be a full Division I basketball program and athletic program, not in our transition years. So a lot going on right now in recruiting, but we're definitely looking forward to the future.
In some ways, literally, it just seems like just a few weeks ago that it was Midnight Madness, actually October the 13th, because it was on a Friday night, and the 15th was on a Sunday. And I remember a nice crowd at the Gates Center, and both the men's and women's teams came out at the stroke of midnight, and some fat slob put on a striped shirt and tried to officiate a scrimmage at the end with both the teams. But now that we've had a chance, the season is completed, maybe we can look back and I know that there was a lot of optimism for this season. As you said, the transitional year to make that final break to Division I status. As we've mentioned on this show several times, one of the toughest schedules in the country. And at the midpoint of the season, it was ranked the 11th toughest schedule in the country. But let's look back a little bit, and let's talk first about Midnight Madness, the hopes, dreams, and aspirations, and let's try to go through the season.
Well, that in some ways seems like a long time ago. In other ways, just like last week. So as we look back, I think a couple things. We were in our transition year, and we could basically do what we wanted with our scheduling. And last week at the Mid-Con tournament, and talking to Greg Campy from Oakland, who we played this year, and fortunately we had a great night at the Coliseum and beat. They told me that in their second year of transition, they played 4 Division I opponents, and we played 24. Now, we did that for several reasons. One, we made a lot of money to help the athletic department, and 2, we got to travel around the country, play in some great venues. And really, I think 3 was the key: find out where we're at, what we need to do, and kind of get a timetable of how long it's going to take us to get there. The first and big step is the fact that we'll be fully funded next year. We went from 5 scholarships last year to 10 this year to 13 next year. And I don't care what you say. I mean, you've got to have scholarships, and you've got to have things in place to help you out. You can be a great coach, and if you don't have talent, you're not going to get anywhere. And I thought really Bruce Patterson did a great job this year with the women's program, but Bruce, he didn't lose any of his senses over a year from winning 34 games one year to 4 the next year. And, he came in and didn't get to recruit But again, next year I think he's bringing in some of his recruits because he got in late. And it just shows that really you've got to have some personnel, you got to have some people. And, really that's what we're looking at. But we really didn't know starting out last year what it was going to be like until we really got into it. And we probably overscheduled once we got into that mix of, again, going to Michigan State's tournament, turning around and playing Michigan a couple nights later, and then turning around and playing Ball State. And it was early in the year where Ball State was really hot, coming off wins against Kansas and UCLA, and that was exciting to play. But we really didn't want to look at it as wins and losses this year. Let's just try to keep getting better. And really, I look at it several different ways. Number one, I was real pleased with the year and how we battled and how we fought and how we got close in a lot of games. And I was disappointed in the year in how we battled, fought, and got close in games but didn't win them. And with the year of injuries and some other obstacles we faced, one of our best inside players only playing 9 games, having 2 kids in the first week break their foot, and then throughout the year we had several kids that missed a game here, 2 games there with some minor injuries. We really only had 4 kids that played in every game this year. So that was a frustrating point, Mike. I really thought, playing the tough schedule was difficult, but if we knew that, we could bring these guys every night and compete, that would have been a lot easier than, trying to go with smoke and mirrors and put a 2-guard guarding somebody else's 4-man, somebody's power forward, like we did, towards the end of the year. But all in all, I think we really learned a lot, and I really believe that we did the right thing by making the schedule very difficult because the wins and losses right now, it's still important, and that's why you play the game, is to win it. But at the same time, I think if we can make progress with our program year in and year out and get to another level, then I think it's all worth it.
You and I both like to play with numbers sometimes. Probably me more so than you, but I know in the past we've talked about it. The fact that this team was competitive in so many games against such a high caliber of talent. We look at some of the numbers. We opened up Morehead State here at the Coliseum. Big night, a lot of excitement. Though the final score was 82-73, we were there to the end. We go to Toledo, tough MAC foe. We're right in it, leading in the second half, midway through. We end up losing by a handful. You mentioned the Michigan State. Was the Michigan State weekend perhaps, in terms of the number of people that saw us play and how the team played, not taking away the fact that we lost those 2 games to Michigan State and Maine, but might that have been the highlight of the year, playing in front of nearly 15,000 fans?
I'm not going to say it was the highlight of the year. I think the highlight of the year was beating Oakland at the Coliseum here because they won the Mid-Continent championship last year as far as the regular season goes. I also think beating Chicago State twice this year, another Division I opponent who is in the Mid-Continent, was a good highlight too. But definitely the Michigan State game was probably in the top 3 or 4. You just don't realize how powerful that is. I mean, that's the mecca right now of college basketball. And you can talk about your Kansas and you can talk about Duke and all that, and it's right up there with it. I mean, they're the only team in the last 3 years to go to the Final Four, all 3 years. And Kansas and Duke hasn't even done that. So, going in, and I just spoke today to a service club, and I talked to them about, driving the bus into the building, into the Breslin Center and getting out and walking into the locker room and seeing the tournament gifts there that were given to us and getting onto the floor. And part of you sits there and goes, I hope we don't get beat by 50. I hope we compete. And that, they're going to be right there when it's all said and done as far as Michigan State being back in the tournament. And they were playing 3 freshmen a lot. So, I mean, that's just one of those high-profile teams. And to do what we did, again, as I mentioned, not to be redundant, but moral victories really don't count a lot. But I think that did as much for our program getting off the ground. And you got to realize that week, early in the week, we were down in Miami at Florida International, lost by 2 points to them in a game that we really, I think the game got taken from us, in the last few seconds with a bad call. And it wasn't a bad call because it was an indecisive call. It was a rule call, and they missed a rule basically on a charge, and the ball hadn't been thrown in from out of bounds yet. We were supposed to get 2 free throws awarded to us, and they took the ball out of bounds, and that was just a mistake by the officials. And but you can't dwell on that. But I really thought, that was a game that was our 5th game of the season, and we really, I think, got a lot of respect around the country throughout the year, and that's really what we were hoping for. We could have, like I said, dialed it down, but we wanted to make it as difficult as we could on ourselves, and sometimes I think, who scheduled these games? But I really believe that if you're afraid to fail, you're never going to succeed. You're never going to reach, the level of play that you want to reach, and that's what, we're trying to do. I mean, we got a good group of kids coming back. We're going to have a good group of kids coming in to mix with that, and I think we've really learned a lot about what it takes now. We don't have all the answers, probably never will, but what it takes now to compete at this Division I level. And every year we're going to play some top teams. We get calls from Ohio State, Michigan again, Iowa State. I mean, teams that have been there in their selected power conferences. And my biggest weakness is I love to go play them. Probably stupid, but you get to see great arenas. You get to play in them, and you get to compete against these teams. And somewhere down the line, just like in Oakland, we're going to slip up and beat one of these teams, and then the phone will probably stop ringing.
Before we take a break, let's talk about that Oakland game. It was at the Coliseum. Good promotional effort. I believe we had upwards of, 2,300 fans there. As you said, Oakland had a very good team this year. In their first tournament game, they played awfully hard, and that's a team, as you said, made the transition from Division II to Division I just like we did. And they finally got a chance to play postseason. But it was a 77-71 Mastodon victory, and every one of us that were there was excitement in the Coliseum that night.
Well, no doubt, and I would guess it was probably closer to 3,000 people. But, we were excited from the fact that it was our last time we were going to play in the Coliseum this year, and it was against an opponent who was in the Mid-Continent Conference, the league that, we're pitching to get into, and obviously we had a winning record in that league this year, so that was a highlight. We also had a home court winning record. We were 6-4, and that includes the 2 Coliseum games. So, you can pull a lot of things from this, but we went into that game knowing that they were sandwiched in between playing Valparaiso on a Saturday night and Southern Utah the next Thursday, and that's tough for them. But we were doing them a favor by trying to put them on the Coliseum floor where they hadn't been before, because this was the first year they were eligible for postseason play. So we're kind of doing each other a favor in that regard, Mike. As the game progressed, they play a real strange defense, which is called the amoeba defense, and they stretch it out to half court. It's like a tough man-to-man, but they trap, and you get different looks out of it. It's never the same, and that's why it's an amoeba. But fortunately for us, we had probably 9 days from our last game to that game, and we probably had a good 4 or 5 days to prepare for that game and to really work on that. And we had the upper hand, there's no doubt about that, and the benefit of that. They had 1 day to prepare for us and probably didn't take us too serious anyways. And we were down 4 at half, 38-34. Terry Collins had a great first half, had 17 first half points, shot the ball very well, and of course Terry missed our first game against Morehead State because of the transfer rules. And I think he was trying to make up some ground because he finished with 25 and just did a spectacular job. Jeremy King had a very good game for us, and in fact, that's the only game all year that Nick Wise didn't score in double figures. And we learned a lot about our team that night. Nick struggled, but we still won. And we really had guys step up, and of course with 1:47 to go, Terry hit a big 3 when we were tied at 69 all, and that got us to 72-69, and then we got a couple stops, a couple steals, and some turnovers. And Keon Henderson, who later tore up his knee and had ACL surgery, had a big game for us with 9 points and 5 rebounds. And I just really thought Jim Kesnick stepped up and did a big job. D'Angelo Woodall was great in that game with like 16 points and a lot of assists. So we had a lot of good play from a lot of our kids, and usually in the games that we got to a point and then we kind of faltered that game, we just stepped it up, hit some key shots, and I'll tell you what, that definitely was the highlight game of the year, Mike. That was a game that, you know, we could take and make a lot of tapes of that game and really be proud. And Greg Campy from Oakland came back to me at the Mid-Con tournament a couple weeks ago, last week, and said, you know, I hope the people at IPFW understand how big a game that was for you. He said, we did that our first year and beat Loyola, and that was just a huge game. And so we have to take a lot of things from that game. I wish we had the next two games that week against Middle Tennessee State and Lipscomb. We lost by a total of 10-4 and could have won either game. And, you know, those are the disappointing things, because you would hope you take something from that game and then really use it to your benefit. And although I thought we played pretty good in spurts, you know, we really should have won at least one of those next two, and we didn't. But again, it was all a learning curve.
We're reviewing the recently completed men's basketball season. Our guest is head men's basketball coach Doug Knoll, and we'll continue our conversation when Mastodon Spotlight returns in just a moment.
I'm sick of dealing with you. I'm sick of
I work 6 days a week.
Who
do you think you
Stand
are?
up straight. Don't you ever talk back to me again! You just shut up!
What are you crying about?
What a child learns about violence, a child learns for life. Teach carefully. We can show you how. Act against violence. Call 877-ACT-WISE for a free brochure.
What is a hero? Are heroes born, or are they made? In after-school programs, your kids will uncover hidden strengths, discover they have the power to change their future, and find the hero inside themselves. Let us know you on after-school programs in your area. Call 1-800-USA-LEARN. After-school programs, helping kids find the hero within.
I wasn't going to school because I was hanging with the wrong crowd. And one day, I was put into juvie for 2 stolen cars, robbery of a house, and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. And I was locked up. That's when I really realized that, I mean, it wasn't for me. Like, I was only in there 2 months, but to me, that was enough. It'd be better for me to stay in school, just get my education. I think I'm happier now. I know I'm happier now.
Welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight. Our emphasis this week is basketball, men's basketball to be specific. Our guest is head men's basketball coach Doug Knoll. We're reviewing the recently completed season. And Doug, as I said in the last segment, we both like to play with numbers, perhaps me more so than you. And one of your favorite phrases, as I've gotten to know you the last 3 years, is possessions. And before we start taping, I come into you looking back at some of the numbers. 8 games that we lost within 3 possessions. And 10 games, you counted as we're talking 5.7 point differential. That's 2 possessions. We're getting close. We're very close to being not only competitive, but perhaps with the right mix of returning players and incoming players, we can start seeing some more W's and fewer L's.
Well, we really think so, Mike. When you look at the breakdown this season and the stats, our total for the season was only about 10 points difference from our offensive average to our defensive average, and you know, that's basically 3+ possessions. I think we figured out one time along the way, and we kept having to add to that because we kept playing close games and we kept losing. But I think all in all there was 10 games where we lost by a total of 6.7 points per game. And that's barely over 2 possessions a game. I mean, that's 2 stops and a score, 2 scores and a stop, 3 stops, however you want to look at it. That if we could have been better, we could have won a ball game. And again, you know, you're looking at 80, 90, 100 possessions in a game, so it's very minuscule on how close we really did come this year. And you know, I think that's one thing, although very disappointing. We can build on that for next year. We can, you know, definitely take that and say, you know, here's where we really need to be tougher in these areas. And we can start next week because the kids get back from spring break, and we can start our spring practices. In the spring, we go more of smaller groups, even individually, one-on-one with coaches, to really work on some of the improvement areas that we know we need to work on with each and every guy, and skill sessions. So then when we get in the fall, we can go back to maybe 3 or 4 guys in a group and start to work on the offense a little more. But right now we're going to work on those. But yeah, it was close. Our possessions were close. Even UMKC, the last night of the season, we lost by 15, but we were up 2 at half. We were up 1 with 10 minutes to go, and I think even with 3 minutes to go, we were like down 4, and they hit 8 straight free throws in the last minute of the game. So really, we were, again, just right there, but we just couldn't get over the hump because of some mismatches and some kids that we didn't have. But, you know, we'll learn from it.
Before we talk about a couple of the players, and especially the seniors, one quick thought and comment, as we talked about before we started taping, strength of schedule. 3 opponents we played this year are going on to the NCAA, and that's San Diego State, Michigan State, and I'm drawing a blank.
UIC.
Yeah, and
Illinois,
Chicago. 2 teams are playing in the NIT, Montana State, Ball State. 3 other schools, Maine, IUPUI, and again I'm drawing a blank on the third one, Loyola made it to the finals of their conference tournament within 1 game of going to the NCAAs. A tribute to your ball club, you and your staff and your kids. They played competitive with all of these teams.
Well, for the most part. I mean, you know, we had our moments like at Ball State and Michigan. In fact, we calculated at Ball State, we beat them by 2 for 33 minutes, and for 7 minutes they beat us by like 22. So, you know, we had to keep those big runs from happening. In a couple games, we didn't. The Michigan game got away from us in the last 5 minutes. It was a 14-point game, and they ran the table in the last 5. We kind of ran out of gas. And IUPUI, we had a bad last 5 minutes. And Long Beach State really wasn't fair to our kids because we pretty much got annihilated there. But that was the one game that we really just weren't in from start to finish. And part of that, without making excuses, was we played 4 games in 8 days in 4 states, and we flew from Montana State back home for 2 days for Christmas, and then flew back out to Oregon State and played them, and then Long Beach the next night. So I really felt like, you know, the bear jumped on our back right then, and we just didn't have any legs. We got to San Diego State, rested for 3 days, played them, down 8 with 5 to go, and then again, free throws down the stretch when we foul. Made it a 16 or 18-point game, but again, really battled, and I think, you know, it's a tribute to the kids to hang in there. You know, when we were just physically not near what we needed to be last year, and so, you know, help's on the way. We have 6 new kids this year. 4 of them will be interior players, 2 guards, to go along with some of our other key kids to mix and match and try to fit the puzzle together, and that's what we're looking at.
We've only got a couple of minutes left. I'd like you to comment briefly on the 2 seniors that played, Matt Shepard and Nick Wise, and then if time permits, a brief look at some of the opponents we're going to play next year.
Well, with Matt, he was a junior college transfer. We got him out of Muskegon, and probably one of the only guys in the country to play Division I, II, and III and junior college basketball. But he went to Hope College first, at Division III, transferred to a junior college, Muskegon, then came back to IPFW for 2 years. We ran the Division II table, and then we went to Division I. So Matt's seen it and done it all. And I said he can tell his grandkids someday, being from Michigan, that he played at the Breslin and Michigan State and Chrysler at Michigan, and that'll be a highlight for his career. But and Matt knows too. At the time, you know, we recruited a Division II basketball player, and pretty much that's what Matt was. And not a knock on him. I mean, that's what he was suited for. So at the Division II level, he led us in rebounding, was over 6 a game. He scored probably 9 or 10 a game, and had a pretty good junior year. Well, then we moved to Division I, and he had to take the challenge. We got some bigger kids in, and he really struggled a little bit to try to reach at that level, but I thought did a great job of really working in. He started a lot of games his junior year, didn't his senior year, but that was a tribute to him. He's going on to law school. I'm very pleased with that. I know he'll be successful, and that's something that we love as the kids graduating and going into being a great part of society and being an impact. With Nick, I mean, I don't think for 3 years you can ask for anything more. I mean, he's our all-time three-point leader by a long, long margin. In fact, after 2 years, he was our all-time three-point leader. He was very solid, didn't waver. I think he averaged 14 plus, 17, 18 plus, and 18 again, and very close in rebounds all 3 years. Other than the first, when he came in and averaged just under 15, were mirror images of each other. And I give him a lot of credit, Mike, because he scored 19 a game at the Division II level, and I really thought he may struggle a little bit this year. But when you look at what he did, he came back with 18 a game. At one point towards the end of the year, he was in the top 5 in the country in three-point baskets made. And the leader was Dan Dickow from Gonzaga. And so he was right there in great company. Really did a great job for us. I'm not sure he finished in the top 5 because those guys went on to play in the tournament. But he definitely rewrote some of our record books here and just did an outstanding job. I don't know how many teams we played that said, I wish we had him on our team. That would add one more great weapon. And so he really put a foundation together and helped lay that for us and our basketball program down the road.
Unfortunately, John says we're out of time.
Well, John always says that, but I guess he's the boss.
He is one of the bosses, that's for sure. Thanks to you and Joe and Fred for all the things that you do for us here with the program and also with the broadcast that we were able to do. And we will have you back at least once more after recruiting period, sometime in either April or early May, when we can talk about all the people that you've signed. And at that time, we'll also talk about the upcoming schedule for next year as well. But again, thanks to you and everyone on your staff and your team. 7-21 may not sound good, but as we both know, you're not judged by wins or losses all the time. There's a little word called character, and this team had some character this year.
Well, we appreciate that, Mike. Thanks for your help. I know you make the big bucks, so we appreciate that. And to Channel 56 and all the people, it'd take too long to name them all, but all the people that down from Bernie and John that really helped us. So thanks a lot for a great year.
Doug Noah has been our guest, head men's basketball coach here at IPFW. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to have a couple of conversations with officials from the Mid-Continent Conference. They were here last week, the third year of the postseason men's and women's basketball tournaments. And we had a chance to speak with a couple of gentlemen. And you'll see those conversations when Mastodon Spotlight returns in just a moment.
As time flows on, there are places we return to again and again. Places that comfort us with their serenity. Places that astound us with their beauty. Places where our memories come to life. Precious places, timeless places, places that with your help can endure forever. I'm Paul Newman. Help the Nature Conservancy save the last great places around the world.
I was a liberal arts major in college.
I didn't speak a second language.
What could I?
What could I offer the Peace Corps?
The answer surprised me. I served in South Africa teaching HIV/AIDS awareness.
Working with my students in Nicaragua was a great experience. We taught each other a lot about our countries and cultures.
This is the Peace Corps today.
Redefine your world. Join the Peace Corps.
Apply now at peacecorps.gov.
Welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight. For the third year in a row, the Mid-Continent Conference postseason men's and women's basketball tournaments have been held here in Fort Wayne. And for the second year in a row, we have been very fortunate here on Mastodon Spotlight to have the opportunity to speak with some of the officials from the Mid-Continent Conference. And our first guest in this segment from the Mid-Con is Tony Hamilton. Tony is the Director of Media Relations. And first and foremost, welcome to Fort Wayne. Welcome to Mastodon Spotlight.
Thank you very much.
For the benefit of some of our viewers, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
I grew up in Indianapolis, so I know very well the place that basketball has in the state of Indiana. Worked at Butler University, actually attended Butler University for 4 years, and then worked there for 2 years in their sports information office. A couple of years ago, my wife, who was from the, well, then she was my girlfriend or fiance, from the south side of Chicago, decided she wanted to move back home, and luckily enough for me, the Mid-Con's Assistant Director of Media Relations job opened up, and I moved up and worked in that capacity for a year last year, and then I was promoted last spring. And I've been the Director of Media Relations since July 1st of last year.
By definition, what is a Director of Media Relations?
Master of chaos, one who can balance many things. It's certainly been something that I always wanted to have the job. I always wanted to be in charge, and I always wanted to have that, you know, onus upon me. But at the same time, I didn't realize some things that were going to be going on. A variety of things have thrown some wrenches into the plans this year. But at the same time, I think our coverage of all of our sports, at least out of the Mid-Con office, and what we've done for the people has been better than it ever has been before, at least in my opinion. And I think that our media coverage has increased too. So, you know, when there's only two people in an office, each person's got to do a lot of stuff, especially, you know, with the internet today and how much people rely on going to your website and that type of thing, which is something that we didn't have to worry about 5 or 10 years ago. So it's a balancing act. That's the best way I can describe my job on a daily basis. I have a TV in my office that I used to watch, and I haven't turned it on in probably 8 months. So I guess that's better than, it keeps me busy, keeps me off the streets.
When we talk about media relations, obviously we talk radio, we talk TV, we talk print media. For the benefit of some of the viewers that may not know, the Mid-Continent offices are in Elmhurst, Illinois, near Chicago. But you've got 8 member schools that range from a Chicago State, literally in your backyard, to an Oral Roberts University in Tulsa, to Southern Utah University, way out in no man's land. Or at least we say it's no man's land. They would differ, I think. You've got Valparaiso, you've got IUPUI, you've got, and some other schools. So you've got 8 schools you have to take care of. You've got, I believe, is it 17, 18 sports that you cover?
I think we're up to 19 when you factor in, I think, women's golf, which, well, actually, we've been sponsoring women's golf, I guess, for a little while now. But it is 19 sports. It's an awful lot of work, but some of them, you know, double up. You've got indoor and outdoor track, so that counts as 4. We sponsor a lot of sports, and by the way, the ones that you missed, I think, were UMKC and Oakland, just in case they felt slighted. And yes, the people in Cedar City, Utah, even think that they're out in the middle of no man's land, sometimes. We have 7 sports in the fall, I believe. We have cross country and men's and women's soccer, volleyball. Actually, it's men's and women's cross country. Golf and tennis go on in the fall, and then we get into the winter with basketball, which is obviously a very busy time, swimming and diving, and then in the spring, on the back half of the school year, which, you know, a lot of people think that that's, you know, the easy part, and it's not necessarily, because you've got a lot of sports going on there too, with baseball and softball and track and field again, and golf and tennis and that type of thing. So everybody gets our attention in the media relations office.
Who's more difficult to deal with? I know it's a loaded question. SIDs and coaches from member schools or members of the media, be it radio, TV, or print?
More difficult to deal with. They all have their own complaints. It's amazing. You don't give one guy player of the week, or if you don't give one person player of the week, you hear it from a lot of different people. You might hear it from a coach. Even though I've tried to quash that, I've told our SIDs they better not call, because we have our reasons behind it, and I try to be as fair and as equitable as I can in the player of the week selection and that type of thing, in the awards that we actually have something to do with. Obviously, the coaches and media vote for all conference in basketball, and coaches only in all conference in the other sports. But the media members actually have been pretty easy to deal with. I have no problem fulfilling any requests that they have, because when you're a mid-major conference, you'll take anything you can get. There's no media outlet that gets turned away, or no media outlet that you think isn't worthy of your time, because any sort of coverage that you can get, whether you're the Mid-Continent Conference or the Missouri Valley Conference, the Mid-American Conference, whoever you are, and the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, even some smaller ones than us, you take anything you can get, and you do it with a smile, and I have no problem doing that. Any request that comes across, I don't have a problem from the media. And our SIDs are the same way. I mean, I think our office is there to serve them more than they're there to serve us. I think they're more my bosses sometimes than I am in charge of anything that they do.
Let's talk about the Mid-Continent Conference postseason basketball tournament. As I said earlier, it's the third year that's been here in Fort Wayne, and now this is your first year as being responsible for all the different media functions. Talk about some of the good, the bad, and the ugly issues. It's a lot of work. The viewer may get to watch a championship game on ESPN2 with the men, or this year the women on Fox Sports, and they see the finished product. They see schools on the floor playing and fans in the stands and so forth. But yeah, there's so much behind the scenes work. Talk a little bit about it. You have to deal with these different, like I said, the media outlets as well as the competing schools.
Well, it's funny because a lot of people, the question is, how do you do a TV broadcast? And I said, I don't. I don't do anything with a TV broadcast. I put the people where they're supposed to go. I give them their seats. I will help out the talent and whether it's the play-by-play guy and the color guy or whatever, and say, listen, here's some notes about our teams and about our league, and please talk favorably about us as much as you can. And I leave that, as it's supposed to be, because the TV people are very self-sufficient. They come in, they set up, they know exactly what they're doing. That's their job. They're professionals. They do it on a daily or bi-daily or whatever it is basis. As far as the behind-the-scenes stuff goes, it's just sometimes grunt work that needs to be done. Whether it's making flip cards for press row, or whether it's setting up the seating. That's a juggling act. You want to try to keep the radio guys away from each other, especially if they're doing the same game, or you want to try to keep a beat writer next to a radio person because they've been sitting next to them all year. That's just a mix and match type thing. And there have not been too many things, surprisingly, that have come up, and I realize that I'm speaking possibly a little bit early because we've still got 2 games to go at this point as we talk, but so far there have not been very many things that have gone wrong. Anything that's that's been forgotten or anything in that effect, it's been taken care of and nipped in the bud. So that's all you can do. If problems come across, if anybody has an issue, as you know from working over there, the media room's been a little chilly, sub-zero, and that's why we gave out blankets for the media gift this year, keeping people warm. But any sort of problems that come up, you just have to take them in stride and say, listen, nothing's going to go off without a hitch, so you might as well just take care of them and move on.
This is an NCAA-sponsored event in a sense that the winner of these tournaments, and as we tape this, as you said, the championship games are scheduled for tonight. The winners go on to the NCAA tournament. How has your relationship been with the NCAA?
I talked to 2 people there mostly, and there's 2 guys in the statistics office. And I get along with them fine because I try as best I can to get the things done that they need me to get done on time. A lot of times our SIDs have responsibilities too at the end of the year. I tell my SIDs, don't get on the NCAA's hit list of people that haven't turned things in, because it's not necessarily embarrassing, but it also doesn't give the NCAA a very good look at what our conference can be. And again, you take care of business and that type of thing, and they're not going to get on your back. And whether that's with recruiting, or whether it's eligibility or media relations or statistics or whatever it is. If you just take care of your business, they're not going to get on your back. If you don't do that, then you're gonna have sanctions, and whether that's from, if you're a school, obviously you'll lose scholarships, and obviously in worst case death penalty type stuff. If you're me, they just don't want to have to deal with you. So if you're nice and if you take care of your business, there are no problems at all from the NCAA. They're a happy, if not very stoic group of people down there.
You're based out of Elmhurst, Illinois. Do you get a chance to see many of the athletic competition events at all? I mean, be it basketball or baseball or track. Do you get a chance to travel to the member institutions?
No. A lot of times there's, before me, a lot of people traveled to championships and that type of thing, but my thought has been that I can get the work done easier and in a quicker fashion after a tournament or that type of thing at home, and just having the people who run the tournament get me the statistics that they need, and I can take care of the things that need to get taken care of. As far as the local schools go, I certainly try to get to. I got down to Chicago State this year. I got to Valparaiso. I have taken a trip to Oral Roberts since I've been on staff. I've visited IUPUI. I've been to UMKC before, so I've been to a lot of our schools. There's a couple I still haven't been to, which sounds pretty foreign probably for people watching. They couldn't probably understand how you don't get to the places, but Cedar City, Utah is not around the corner. So, but I keep up as best I can with the things that are going on campus. I think our SIDs do a good job of keeping me updated on what's working and what's not and that type of thing. And when we make appearances on TV, I certainly try to dial us in. Trust me, if I wasn't working tonight, I'd be watching the game on ESPN2 with a Coke and popcorn probably. But our campuses are nice to visit. I don't think that we've got a bad campus in our league to go visit. So it is fun when I do get to go there.
Total we're out of time, but thanks a lot again for coming in. I know it's a busy week for you, busy weekend, and I do appreciate giving us a little bit of your time to inform our viewers exactly what you do for the Mid-Continent Conference.
Not a problem. I appreciate your help with the tournament.
Tony Hamilton's been our guest, Director of Media Relations for the Mid-Continent Conference. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk to Ed Grom, who's the Associate Commissioner of the conference as well. But that's when Mastodon Spotlight returns in just a moment.
All over America, people are taking the National Radon Test. Have you?
You put me on the spot!
True or false? Radon is the second leading cause of lung cancer.
True. I'd say false.
No, it's true.
That's something new to me.
The Office of the Surgeon General recommends all homes be tested for radon.
False.
It's true.
True.
So it's bad. We should get our house tested.
Sure, I'm gonna call it.
1-800-SOS-RADON.
How can you not call?
1-800-SOS-RADON.
Today's teenagers, the way people talk, you'd think they can't do anything right. It's just not so. We get to know over 300,000 kids a year, smart kids, who know what they want. They believe in themselves, and they believe in America. Some go straight to college. Others choose to learn leadership, discipline, courage, and commitment first with us. Today's military, making a stronger America, one good kid at a time.
A new century is coming, and with it, 1,000 questions. Will your family ever be in harm's way? Will a small town in Texas be hit with a hurricane? Will your daughter ever need a new kind of blood treatment? We have no crystal ball for the world that awaits. Just one promise. We'll be there.
Welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight. We have the chance now to speak with what I believe is the #2 man in the organization at the Mid-Continent Conference. We welcome to Mastodon Spotlight Associate Commissioner Ed Grom.
Great. Glad to be here.
As we asked Tony a few minutes ago, would you kindly tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Wow. Grew up in northern Illinois, in Waukegan, Illinois, right on Lake Michigan, about 15 miles from the Wisconsin border. Grew up there and attended college at the University of Kansas, where I played on the golf team there. Graduated.
Good sport.
Graduated from there in '84 and immediately took a job at the Big 8 Conference office in Kansas City, where I stayed there for 3 years before I went on to UMKC to become their first sports information director as they moved on to Division I. Gradually moved up the ladder at UMKC to become associate athletic director, and then eventually the interim athletic director for an 18-month period before a new president came on board and hired a new one. So, and from there, I went to the Mid-Continent Conference office 2 years later, and here I am in my 3rd year.
And now you're number 2 man on the totem pole. Obviously, you work closely with Dr. John Steinbrecher, who was the commissioner of the conference. If we can go back just a moment, and as you politely informed me before we started taping the segment, you know what it's like making the transition to Division I. Talk about some of the experiences you encountered at UMKC, if you can.
UMKC was an NAIA school for a number of years, very successful program, and what the school was looking for was some identity, and they thought that athletics was the best way for the school to get identity. So several businessmen in town put up the money and raised a bunch more, and soon we had a Division I program there at UMKC. But I feel the pain of Mark Pope and the staff here of trying to schedule contests during the year with just about everybody. We're an independent for, I believe it was 6 years before the Mid-Continent opening came about in '96. So it was very difficult, but at the same time a lot of fun and a lot of fulfilling times for everybody on the staff. It was a very small staff, and you kept your hat in just about every ring there was. So I mean, that's one of the blessings I've had is being able to work in just about every facet of an athletic program.
What words of advice could you offer to Mark and to Mike Jewell, our SID here, besides hang in there?
Yeah, one thing is patience. Don't try to expect everything at one time. I mean, from what I understand, they're doing all the right things at the Division I level to get where they need to be. So I wish them the best of luck, and I know it's not easy, but at the same time, the NCAA rules were a little bit different back when UMKC went Division I. They were able to gain Division I status a little bit quicker than most. I guess there's some similarities in that we're in a major market in Kansas City, but at the same time we have a lot of institutions around us that we can schedule, and IPFW is in the same boat.
Let's take that a step further if we can. UMKC, for some of our viewers, University of Missouri at Kansas City. Obviously, connotations with University of Missouri, home base Columbia.
Sure.
You're in Kansas City, not far from Lawrenceburg, Kansas, University of Kansas. Just like we here at IPFW, down the road south of us is IUPUI. To the northwest of us is Notre Dame. To the west of us is West Lafayette, Purdue.
Sure.
And way down south in Bloomington is IU. How much help did you get from those other, I don't want to call them sister institutions, but in a way they were sister institutions, in getting your program started?
In some respects, it made it more difficult. The University of Missouri was considered to be the university in Missouri, and they would not help at all in terms of scheduling contests with any of our teams. And in fact, they thought that a university going Division I within a state other than them was probably a hindrance and perhaps would hurt their recruiting base. But at that time, Lee Hunt was the athletic director, and he had ties all over the country, being the head coach at the University of Mississippi and being with Gene Bartow for a number of years at UAB and Illinois and UCLA. So he had a lot of friends in the industry that he was able to call in some friendships with and schedule games with. It. We were able to get Oklahoma State on the schedule, Kansas State right away, and we were able to fill up the auditorium there in Kansas City our very first year.
Let's talk a little bit about your role in the conference. As I've said, as far as I know, you're number 2 person. You work with John closely. What exactly are some of your duties?
Probably my main responsibility is championship events and to organize those, make sure that everything is ready to go for when it comes to checklists, awards delivery, the running of every competition, whether it be a track meet, a baseball tournament, a softball tournament. just make sure things go smoothly. Work it out, be a liaison with the officials that work those events as well. Just help the institution that's hosting the event run it smoothly, and make the others that come in feel like they're at a neutral event more so than a home event of one of the schools that's competing. For the last few months, though, obviously I've been the tournament director of the Mid-Con tournament here in Fort Wayne, so I've been working on a daily basis with a lot of the volunteers here in Fort Wayne, a lot of the city leaders who have really volunteered and donated their time to help make this thing a success. And this year, I am more than pleased to announce that this is probably our best year we've ever had in terms of commitment from those individuals, as well as from the city leaders, and the people at the Coliseum have been just tremendous.
And we top it off tonight when we crown 2 champions. As we tape this show on Tuesday, it's championship night. The women, Valparaiso, going up against Oakland University near Detroit, where I'm from. And the men's, it's Homer Drew and the Valpo Crusaders, going to take on IUPUI and flamboyant Ron Hunter, their head coach. And let's talk a little bit about this tournament. Obviously, you know, the buck stops with you. We talked a little bit in the last segment with Tony about what he has to deal with. Talk about some of the things that you have to deal with. You've got 8 member institutions. You've got 2 major TV networks, and Fox and ESPN. You've got umpteen print media people, newspapers around the conference and the country. You've got radio people and so forth. Not enough hours in the day.
You just hit the tip of the iceberg, I believe. There's a lot of things on the periphery that people really don't notice that go into running a tournament, whether it comes to courtesy cars for the officials from the schools to come in, setting up hotel arrangements for the schools, setting up volunteers, setting up ball boys, program sellers, merchandisers, you name it and we do it. Basically, what we try to do is just give the teams and administrators coming to town the best event possible when it comes to hospitality, when it comes to making sure that they have everything they need, turning them in the right direction when they need assistance, whether it be driving directions, restaurant information, etc. Joe Bear at Sport One has done a tremendous job. I'm sure a lot of the viewers out here know Joe. He gets volunteers, he gets team hosts, someone from the community who will spend the time with the team when they arrive, show them around town, stay with them at team meals and whatnot. Those people are invaluable resources for those coaches. We also have Lou Valentic from K&K Insurance, who does a tremendous job in providing our institution's vehicles to use while they're in town. Art Mendelbaum this year is our local organizing committee chair, done a tremendous job in organizing his staff to help us get this tournament running. And of course, Andy Bangs from the Sports Corp here in Fort Wayne, again, a tremendous job in getting the volunteers, getting all his people focused to make this the best event possible. And I'm happy to say that it has been this year.
A lot of our viewers do know, they have read the newspapers and they have seen on TV and heard on the radio the fact that next year this tournament will be in another venue. Obviously, that may or may not add the fact that you got to go into a new facility, a new town, and do a lot of the same things and meet new people. Maybe on a personal note, do you feel that there's a good chance that this tournament may come back to Fort Wayne, and would you like to see it come back to Fort Wayne?
Everybody I talk to from the institutions love coming to Fort Wayne. They love the Coliseum, and all the coaches love the fact that it's a neutral site. What the coaches don't want, and they've been unanimous in their thinking, is they don't want to play this on a home floor of one of the member institutions. But on the other side of it, there's a monetary value when it comes to putting out bids for championships. And the athletic directors and the presidents look at the bottom line. What do they want this tournament to do? Number one, they want to make it a great event for the student athletes. We want to advance our best team into the NCAA tournament so they can have a lower seed and a better chance for success. And also financially, how much money can this tournament make for the conference and the institutions? So what they did was they took all of those 3 factors into account and put out a bid document that several entities did bid for. Unfortunately, Fort Wayne did not make the final cut. The 2 finalists are Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Kansas City, Missouri. So next year we will be going to a different site, but then again, 2004 is out there for a bid, and we'd love to have the opportunity to work with the people at Fort Wayne again.
We don't have too much time left in this segment, but I would like to ask, is there one instance in the 3 years that you've been here that comes to mind in a hurry, whether it be good, bad, or indifferent? One instance, one happening that strikes a chord?
Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, Valparaiso has been the major force in basketball in the Mid-Con over the last 7, 8, 9 years. Matter of fact, I think they're playing in their 8th straight championship game tonight. Probably the biggest thing I can remember was Southern Utah winning the title last year. I mean, I think it shocked a lot of people, and what it did was it gave other institutions in this league hope that perhaps they can be the next person to knock off Valparaiso. And IUPUI now has that chance tonight. So, so I think that was probably the most memorable moment, other than just the friendships I've made here in my 3 years, and the great people of Fort Wayne have been so kind to us. So, along with that, I'm looking forward to a wonderful game, championship games on the women's and the men's side tonight, and perhaps we'll be back in 2004.
And on that note, we'll say thank you very much, as we did to Tony. I know, as you say, you got lots of things to do and not enough time to do it, but I do appreciate you giving us a little bit of time.
Oh, you're welcome.
To come over and talk to us about the tournament and so forth.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Ed Grom has been our guest, Associate Commissioner of the Mid-Continent Conference. We thank Ed, along with Tony Hamilton and Doug Knoll, who was on earlier in the program as well. And as always, we thank you, the viewer, for tuning into Mastodon Spotlight to see what's going on with IPFW athletics. We invite you to come back next week, and we come back again with another show. But until then, this is Mike Maas saying, have a great week, and go Dons. With the basketball season finally completed here at IPFW, it's now time to turn our attention to some of the spring sports here on campus. On this week's edition of Mastodon Spotlight, we'll do exactly that, beginning with men's and women's tennis. Our show is called Mastodon Spotlight, and it's coming up next.
Stargate. That's the door to other worlds that my character Tilk and the rest of my team use on Stargate SG-1. It's a door to exploration and exciting adventure. An education can provide you with a similar passageway to a world full of possibilities. So stay in school and graduate.
Hi again, everybody. I'm Mike Maas. Welcome once again to Mastodon Spotlight. Well, as I said a moment ago, basketball is finally over here at IPFW. Season is complete, balls put back, uniforms being washed, and so forth. Now it's time to turn our attention to some of the spring sports. And just for informational purposes, those spring sports include men's baseball, women's softball, and men's and women's tennis, men's and women's track and field. And our first guest this week on Mastodon Spotlight is probably the newest member to the coaching staff here at IPFW. We welcome both to IPFW and to Mastodon Spotlight Eric Burns. And Thanks. Eric is the assistant coach for men's and women's tennis. First and foremost, I guess I'd say welcome to the area and to the program. And
yeah, thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Kindly tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Well, I grew up in Hanover and went to Franklin College for my undergrad. I'm currently at Ball State, finishing up my master's in sports administration. I played 4 years at Franklin College, coached there for a year as an assistant, and then when I moved up to Muncie, I coached at Anderson University as an assistant. And that's when I met Roxanne. We played a match against IPFW last year. I met Roxanne up here, found out about the job opening, and so this year I'm up here at IPFW.
Specifically, what are your duties as the quote-unquote assistant tennis coach?
Well, actually, I just took over as full-time assistant, so I'm in the office full-time. I handle scheduling, budgeting, recruiting. I'm big into the recruiting, just general daily practices.
Now, you and Roxanne are in a unique situation, much like Terry Stefankowitz and Mike Harper are with the soccer program, in that you work with both the men's and women's teams here on campus. Talk a little bit about those experiences, the good, the bad, and the ugly, because you got to have some interesting situations with both teams going at the same time.
Well, I think it was a little difficult in the fall when we had women going to invitationals and men going to other invitationals. You know, we had to split up the teams and the coaches went separate ways. But I think that was good for me to get me some experience, you know, on how to handle those situations and how to, you know, run the team. You know, I had to act more as a head coach in those situations, so that helped me mature as a coach, I think. Now we're back together, and a lot of our matches, you know, we go to the same places together, men and women, so it's been a little different from the fall, but the fall was a little challenging.
Let's go back to the fall, and then we're going to begin with the women's tennis program. First and foremost, perhaps maybe you want to go down a roster of some of the players, and let's talk about, because you did play in the fall and you have played here in the spring already several matches, so
yep.
I'll let you take it from here and first talk about the members of this year's women's tennis team.
Well, our first player is our number one player. She plays number one singles and number one doubles is Jill Carey. She's a freshman from Washington Catholic. She's come in, done a really good job. She's really improved her game. Started out as kind of a baseliner, kind of a passive type player, and we've worked on being more aggressive with her, getting her into the net, and I think she's done a good job at the one position. You know, her record doesn't indicate that, but I think she's learning a lot, and I think next year that'll pay off for her. Another freshman we have is Lindsay White. She's from Adams Central, I believe. And she's more of a doubles player. She's not much of a, she doesn't like to play singles, really despises it, but you know, she's getting good experience at singles, but a really good doubles player, and she's paired with her doubles partner from high school, who is Bethany Kuntzman, and so they're playing doubles together this year. She's also a freshman and playing in the singles lineup. Lindsay plays 5 for us, and Bethany has been playing 4, but the positions down at the bottom, we've been kind of switching things up, so they've gotten experience at all different positions, singles. I'll go to another freshman here, Holly Thiem. She just joined the team at second semester. She's from Carroll. Has come in, she's done a really good job. She works really hard in practice. She's playing mostly 6 singles, and sometimes she gets in the lineup at 3 doubles. But it's really been showing some improvement of late, so we're happy to have her. She's worked really hard. Another freshman, as you can see, we're pretty young here, is Sarah Menzie, and she also joined at the second semester. She is from New Haven, and she's playing mostly 4 singles. She has moved up though. She's playing 3 right now, and a very, very hard-working player. Comes to practice, just does what she needs to do to improve herself. So those are the kind of players we need. And then thinking on down here, a sophomore we have is Zara Mazouk. She joined at the halfway point. She's playing 2 singles now, and doing a very good job. She plays 1 doubles with Jill. They've been a good doubles team together, and she's a really aggressive net player and likes to get in. So as far as upperclassmen, we have Stacy Sharlock, who's a junior, going to be a senior. I think she'll be graduating in December next year, so she's going to be graduating early. So really does a great job at the bottom part of the lineup for us. Really consistent player. Again, another hard worker who just is gritty out there and gets the job done. I'm trying to think if I've got everyone here.
Of course, if we miss anybody, we can apologize later.
Yeah, we could do that. I think that's pretty much the roster that we have right now.
You mentioned, and obviously with the number of freshmen that are playing an awfully young team, what do you see as the biggest transition they have to make from playing high school tennis to collegiate tennis, especially now since we're at the Division I level?
Well, the days of having easy opponents to just go out and pound on in high school, and you'll get those occasionally. I mean, especially even playing one singles, you get those. That's no more. You're playing a tough opponent every day, and you've got to bring it every day, or you're going to be beaten pretty easily. Division I especially. You know, it's so weird. I've been at the Division III level, and you know, you might get by having an off day there and still be able to win off ability alone. But if you woke up on the wrong side of the bed, or you you didn't have a good breakfast and you show up at the Division I level, you better get ready for a long day. So it's consistency at the one level, and every player's good.
Let's talk a little bit about the fact, and I know one of the things that Roxanne and I talked about a while back when we had her on the show, a little bit different this year in that the quote-unquote official seasons for tennis for both men and women at the D1 level, at least right now as far as we know it, is the spring. But as you said earlier, both teams participated in invitationals in the fall. So let's take a run back, if we can, at the women's progress, starting with their matches that they played in the fall.
Okay, well, we opened up with the Eastern Illinois tournament. Had some pretty good results there, especially in the back draw. Won some matches, picked up a couple wins against Chicago State, and so I felt pretty good about that. Got our first Division I win against Oakland. That was a good win for us. We went up to Detroit and played them, got that match 4-3 in a really tight one. We got the doubles point at the end, and so I think that was a really high point of the fall. And then we had a lot of good individual performances at some of the matches. IUPUI had a couple of really good matches there. Lindsay White pulled out a really tough match with Bradley. Jill Carey lost a close one to IUPUI's one player. So it was really promising. The fall season was promising, and I mean the spring continues to be promising too.
When you and Roxanne work with these players, not just the women, but as we'll talk about in the next segment, the men's team as well, how much individual emphasis are you able to give to the players? And really, what are you and Roxanne looking for when you see them on the court? Because obviously you've got to make decisions as to who's going to play at what position, both from a singles and from a double standpoint. How do you two look at it, and what do you how do you determine rather, if I get my tongue untied, who plays where?
Well, it's pretty tough. You just evaluate, you look at the strokes, you look at them every day in practice, you play some challenge matches. Right now we're in a tough position because we're at Wildwood. We have 2 courts to practice on, and we have 4 courts in all. The guys have 2 of them and the girls have 2. So that makes it tough to get everyone, on a court and playing matches. So we play a lot of doubles. But I think we get a good idea of what everyone can do, and we got a good idea back in the fall when we had people out. I mean, we mostly play challenge matches to determine position, but also we go off what we observe as far as stroke ability, abilities at the net, how aggressive are the players, how confident are they in their strokes. You can tell that by just watching them, if they feel confident. So.
When you had the challenge matches, what carrot do you dangle out besides the chance to play 1 single or 1 double or 3 single? Do you do anything like, within the NCAA rules, by the way, of like winner gets a shake at Mickey D's or something like that? Or?
No, we haven't really tried anything like that, but I mean, that you never know. It might be something we can try down the road. I hope as we get more players in, things will get a little more intense. We've kind of got a small roster this year, hoping to add a few more players next year, and I think, depth is the key. I mean, both programs, we need depth. And if we can have some players down in the lower part of the lineup pushing the ones above, then I think that's all we'll need to keep everyone working hard and trying to get better.
We're discussing tennis here on Mastodon Spotlight. Our guest is the assistant coach for tennis, Eric Burns. And we'll continue our discussion on tennis when Mastodon Spotlight returns in just a moment.
For over 3 decades, Dr. James Owen has been credited for helping IPFW become a top-rated school through not only teaching, but also his involvement in the Fort Wayne community.
The kind of people that the city were hiring at the time were people with advanced computer skills. I thought, my Lord, unless my students get up to speed in this particular area, skill and talent, knowledge, that they weren't going to be competitive in the job market.
Dr. Owen developed courses that would train his students to become leaders in the community.
At one time, of the 6 major department heads in the city of Fort Wayne, 3 of them were former students of mine that I recommended for the job.
He makes a point to stay in touch with former students, and that makes a difference in their lives.
Whenever I think about undergraduate days, I always think about old Professor so-and-so. She said, I have one like that too. And she said that's Dr. Owen.
IPFW, the right school, right here, right now.
A new century is coming, and with it, 1,000 questions. Will your family ever be in harm's way? Will a small town in Texas be hit with a hurricane? Will your daughter ever need a new kind of blood treatment? We have no crystal ball for the world that awaits. Just one promise. We'll be there.
Welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight. Our emphasis on this half of the program is tennis. We've been discussing women's tennis with assistant coach Eric Burns. And Eric, before we turn our attention to the men's program, there have been a number of matches here in the spring, and though the results don't look so hot if you look at it in terms of wins and losses, as we tape this program, you have 1 match left, and that is going to be at Youngstown State.
Yep. And that'll be a tough match. Youngstown State is pretty strong. They've beaten some opponents by handily that we've played this year. So we'll really have to bring our best game to compete.
Well, let's talk now about the men's team, and again, I'll let you take it beginning with the roster.
Okay.
And again, after that, we can talk about what they've done in the fall and what they've accomplished so far this spring, because in all honesty, they've been a little more successful in terms of wins and losses than the women, but I'll let you take it and talk about the men's team.
Okay, well, plan number 1 is Ilyas Hasib, and he is a transfer student from Eastern Illinois. He played 2 years at Lakeland College. It's a junior college, and then he transferred to Eastern Illinois, played a year, and now he's here.
We had him on the program last year.
For his senior year, and he's been very successful at one. He's a hard worker, really like his attitude out there. He's out there to win. I mean, he brings it every match. Has a good attitude, and the team would not be the same without him. So he has really helped us elevate the level of our play. I mean, if nothing else, he gives the players below someone, to have to compete with and improve their game against. Plan number 2 is a freshman from Argentina, Ian Lionheart, and he played 3 back in the fall, and we lost a player who decided to transfer, and he moved up to 2, and he's had a tough transition from 3, but he's starting to pick up his game a little here and figure out what he has to do to win at 2. He's been a steady player for us, and really the future for him is great, as he's just a freshman. So we really look for him to be a good player for us down the road. He's getting great experience up at 2. Plan 3 is Matt Bloom. He's a senior, and Matt's a steady player, and just goes out there, and he's a good baseliner, comes to the net when he has to, but he's given us some maturity. He and Elias both are the leaders of the team, in my opinion, and they get the players behind them. If they're up for the match, then everyone else is. So Matt's done a really good job in the leader role. Playing 4 is Sean Fisher, and he's a junior. Aggressive serve and volleyer, likes to attack the net. He's got a big serve. A lot of arm problems. If we could get him over his arm problems, then I think he would be a little more consistent. But another solid player for us. I mean, he's getting better as we speak. So we're happy to have him at 4. Our number 5 player is Dan Biebrick. He's a sophomore, and he's been another solid performer for us. He's a steady baseliner. We need to get him a little more aggressive, get him to attack the ball a little more, but he's done a good job at 5. His schedule has just been crazy. He's in the engineering program, and he's got classes all the time, and he doesn't get to practice as much, with the team, but he's done a really good job. He's worked hard to keep his skills up. And then playing 6, we've got Adam Murata, and he's a walk-on, a junior. And he's done a really good job at 6. Really consistent player again. Needs to be a little more aggressive, but he's working on that. But he's a solid player, and I think the future will be good for him as well if he just keeps working hard. So, and then we have one other player who's ineligible. It's Jesse Nico. He's a transfer, and he's staying out a year. He should be available for next year. He's from Australia, and I think he can help our program, when he gets to play next year. So he's got good hands at the net and really quick. He runs down a lot of balls. So I think the future will be good. We're trying to add some recruits also. So we hope to have a little more depth next year, a lot more competition between the players.
If my memory is correct, and I hope I am, if not, I apologize up front, in the fall we had some international players on. I think you mentioned all 3 of them.
Yep.
And if my memory is correct, Jesse, being from Australia, is the person who, in the junior ranks, played Leighton Hewitt in a tournament.
I've never heard that, but he talks about Leighton Hewitt all the time.
Yeah.
And
he was on this program, and he talked about playing Leighton Hewitt in the junior ranks down in Australia and over in New Zealand as well.
Yeah, and he's really pumped about Leighton Hewitt being number 1 now. So so he's always talking about Leighton Hewitt. So
before we look at the schedule, let's play a little bit of X's and O's for a moment.
Okay.
From both your and Roxanne's standpoint, in coaching both men and women, what do you prefer to teach? Do you prefer to teach them to become a baseline player? And for the benefit of our viewers that may not know all the tennis lingo, and I'll be honest, I'm a novice at some of it as well, baseline playing far back, and usually a person with power plays back there, as opposed to serve and volley, which comes up in front of the net a lot of the times. What method do you two like to teach, or is it more of an individual basis based on the talents of the player?
You have to look at the individual. There are certain players that are made to be serve and volleyers. There are certain players that are meant to be baseliners. I can tell you that our international guys, for the most part, are made to be baseliners. They grew up playing on clay, which is a slower surface. It better suits baseliners. So I mean, that's just where they're from, and that's what they grew up playing. Some of the other guys that have bigger serves and are taller, they might be suited to come to the net. It's just it's what you're used to playing. It's what you grew up. It's what you learned through the junior ranks. Me, I've always been kind of a baseliner. I'm not much of a volleyer, so I don't try to get into the net too often unless I've really got the point set up. But I think you've got to have balance. I think you need to be an all-court player. I think you need to have the ability to serve and volley and come in when the point calls for it. But then you have to be able to rally from the baseline as well. You can't be one-dimensional.
One more technical question, and let's look at the schedule. In the area of the serve, obviously you'd like to have a serve like Goran Ivanisevic or even Pete Sampras when he was in his prime. The rocket server, Rocket Rod Laver, that's dating me back a long ways. In today's tennis world, is more emphasis put on the speed of the serve or on the placement of the serve?
Well, I think the players grow up when they're juniors thinking that you have to hit the ball hard. You have to hit the serve hard. but that's not necessarily the case. I think your better players are the players that can place the ball. And if you look at Pete Sampras, sure, he can hit a 125-mile-an-hour serve, but he can also place it anywhere he wants, and that's why he's successful. Good comparison is you can look at Pete Sampras and you can look at Mark Philippoussis. Philippoussis used to hit his around 140. Sampras hits his 125. Sampras places his better, so he was the #1 player in the world. Philippoussis had injuries and never really reached, his potential. So I think I would go for placement.
Let's turn our attention now to the men's schedule. As I mentioned earlier, in terms of W's and L's, men have been a little more successful, but talk about this season with the men so far.
The season got off to a good start in the fall especially. We went to U of L's Invitational, got to play some bigger teams, some bigger schools. Indiana was there, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Louisville. There were about 18 teams there. So our kids got to play some really good competition. Our one doubles team there got to the semifinals of the B bracket, and along the way they beat Ball State, which was a really good win. Ball State is a nationally ranked program, usually in the top 50, so that was a really good win for us. We also had a good performance at one singles against UK's, I think, 5 or 6 player. When you play those teams competitive, you can feel good just because they are a whole different level, and for our guys to rise and play at that level, it's saying a lot about our players.
They've played well, and unlike the women who have only one match left, the men have several matches left. What's ahead for the men?
Yeah, well, we have Youngstown State coming up this week. That is a really winnable match for us. Youngstown, I think, just barely beat Cleveland State, and we pretty well, handled Cleveland State. So I think, we'll be right there with Youngstown. Actually, I failed to mention we play Western Illinois on Thursday, and that should be another match we should be very competitive in. I don't know if we can get in there and get it done, but I feel confident about that one. And so I think, we could have 2 wins this week. And then a couple of other matches coming up. We've got Lewis coming in on, I believe it's Wednesday the 3rd. And then we have Sinclair coming in on Wednesday the 10th. And they're in junior college. Feel good about those 2 matches. And then Illinois-Chicago is our last match on the 12th, and we'll go there to play them. And I feel good about that. I think they're all winnable matches for us, and so I think we could, if we can win those matches, we could finish the season off, in a good style.
We're almost out of time, but final question for you. As you and Roxanne look ahead in the recruiting wars, obviously the fact that we're a young team means players may get a chance to play earlier, but what are you looking for down the road for both the men's and women's teams and potential talent?
I think it's looking really, really good for next year. Got some really exciting players that we feel will probably sign with us. We're really looking for some players that are going to come in and give it 100% every time out, that want to play college tennis and want to get better and prove themselves, and just have a winning attitude. And so we're looking at some players that come from schools that have been winners, that know state championships, that know maybe junior college national championships, players like that have the right attitude, that will come in and expect to win. That's what we need. We need players that expect to win every time out.
Well, we're out of time, but I thank you very much. I know it was difficult, and we've had a hard time getting you and or Roxanne over here due to schedule commitments on both ends, but again, belatedly, welcome to Fort Wayne, welcome to IPFW, and continued success with both you and Roxanne with both the men's and women's tennis programs.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me on the show.
Eric Burns has been our guest, the assistant coach for men's and women's tennis here at IPFW. We'll take a break and then come back with more of Mastodon Spotlight in just a moment, right here on College 56 Sports.
Matthew Shepard died after he was beaten and tied to a fence. 2 men have been charged. 1 pleaded guilty.
My biggest regret after walking into the hospital and seeing him was I didn't tell him enough as a father that I loved him. The thing that I've learned most is that your son is your son and your daughter is your daughter, regardless of whether they're straight or gay.
This is me, and my mom and dad, and my big brother Alex, and Jack. This is the day I learned that sandals got their name from sand, and that the ocean is bigger than all of us. This is the day we all got to forget I was sick. This was my wish.
According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, it kills over 1,500 people every year and injures 71,000 more. Inadequate sleep has been linked to health and safety risks, even premature death. But today, new treatments are helping millions get the sleep they need. So talk to your doctor or take our free risk assessment on the web at sleepfoundation.org. Sleep deprivation. It's real, it's dangerous, and it's more treatable than ever.
It's the most magnificent sight in the universe. This planet full of life and wonder. This planet we call home. As an Earth Team volunteer, you can help the Natural Resources Conservation Service care for it, right in your own community. Call 1-888-LAND-CARE to find out how, because there's just no place like home.
Welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight. Well, we just talked about men's and women's tennis, and in spite of the weather outside, it is spring sports season here at IPFW. And on this half, the second half of the program this week, we're going to discuss track and field, both men's and women's. And we're happy to welcome back to the program the head coach of IPFW men's and women's track and field, Rick Norton. Rick, welcome back to the program.
Thanks a lot, Mike.
When we last spoke several weeks ago, it was the middle of winter and definitely basketball season, but it was, you were getting ready for the indoor season.
Right.
And you were kind enough to tell us a little bit about the fact that with track and field, there's both an indoor and an outdoor season for the spring. I believe indoors finished. Why don't we take a couple of moments and highlight what the indoor season was like?
We had 5 indoor meets scheduled through the season, and a lot of those were pretty much in the immediate area. We went down to Purdue a couple times. We went to Illinois State. We went to IUPUI a couple of times. Indoor went very well. Most of our meets are large Saturday meets, kind of on the profile of a relay. Many different events to run. Very few of them are scored. And what you basically see is a large pool of athletes. Competition's very good. But because of the mass quantity of participation, they're usually not able to score the meets. Sometimes you'll have anywhere from 500 to 750 athletes competing on a Saturday. And we were fortunate enough to be in a couple of scored meets. And going into our second season as a track program, the men actually won 2 of the 3 meets that were scored. So they actually finished their indoor season with a winning record, 2-1, and the women won 1 out of the 3. So they were 1-2. So we were really ecstatic about that. Really did not expect to do that well in a scored meet since we're so new, so young, and we're very excited about that. So that kind of got the ball rolling, and we're really excited about the outdoor season.
What's been the biggest difference you've seen from year number 2 with track and field as opposed to year number 1?
As far as years, the first year versus...
this year as opposed to last year so far.
Interesting perspective on that. When I came here, they had not had a track program in place. Consequently, they had nothing, 0. Didn't have a baton, didn't have a starting block, didn't really even have uniforms or warm-ups. So our first year was completely focused on getting the things we need in order to coach the events. We raised money to buy warm-ups. to buy all new uniforms. You know, we have starting blocks, we have hurdles, we have crossbars, high jump, I mean everything that you have to have. So really the first year was more geared at materialistic things. And the second year is now really geared at recruiting and getting the athletes that we need into the program. So, and that's starting to pay off in regards to the numbers are starting to increase, and we're really excited about what we think the numbers will be next year.
There is still one, what I consider major roadblock that you and your team have to struggle with for some time, and that's the lack of a home facility. And I know in the couple of times we've been on the program before, we've talked about it, but since you mentioned the magical word recruiting, has the fact that there is not a home track and field facility here at IPFW, has that been a detriment in trying to attract potential student athletes to come and run for you, or has it not made that much of a difference?
Well, I don't know how it probably couldn't be somewhat of a detriment. I think we've done an excellent job of attempting to overcome that barrier. We do have an indoor facility to train at. We do have limited use of the Gates Center here at IPFW. So in regards to not having what you would call a home arena, a home stadium, a home track, there is a disadvantage in that in regards to an identity. You know, that the basketball player can go in the gym and say, you know, this is my gym I'm going to play in. That the soccer player can go on that field and down the road, you know, tennis, softball, baseball, and so on. We don't have that fortune. You know, we can't go into a place and say, you know, this is the track I'm going to run on this weekend, or I'm going to train on. Yeah, and to a certain degree, I think for the program and its identity, that can be somewhat of a detriment. But you know, Mike, those are the cards we've been dealt. We are trying to correct that and move in a positive direction to actually get something in place to where someday we will be able to say, this is our track, you know, this is where we train. Right now, you know, that's not a card on the table, and you know, rather than let that get us down and pull us to the bottom, we're trying to sit here and go, okay, how can we overcome that? And at the same time, we have that glimmer of hope that that's not going to be a long-term problem. And I guess that's really what kind of keeps me going, is the challenge of making that happen.
Let's turn our attention briefly in the last couple of minutes of this segment to the issue of scheduling. Being a new program, obviously you and Mike Frucci, who is your able-bodied top assistant, and we'll talk about some of your other helpers perhaps in the next segment.
Great.
Or 2 segments down the road. How are you able to schedule meets? And talk about a little bit the process. Obviously, you got to get on the phone or get on the internet or so forth, but what's the reception been like for calling schools and saying, hey, can I have my school compete?
Well, and I guess going to Division I, that becomes more of a problem than what some coaches realize. That is one huge advantage for us in track and field as compared to maybe a basketball coach trying to schedule a D1 game with another D1 school. As I mentioned before, most of the meets are conducted on the weekend, and they're in a large format where you have multiple teams coming in. They don't score it, so really we're pretty much welcome with open arms with almost every meet we try to get into. Now, there are 2 or 3 meets we've tried to get into where they limit the number of teams that are entered, and those are usually scored meets. And you know, they simply told us, you know, you're too young. When you get better established, we might consider you. But in regards to getting in meets that are against anybody you can name in Indiana, you know, Notre Dame, IU, Purdue, Ball State, Indiana State, you know, we go to meets and we'll see them every weekend. You know, some of those. Our first outdoor meet's at the Purdue Open. So as far as it's great because we can get into a meet and really go against anybody we want, and it's not difficult to make that happen. So as far as the scheduling goes, it's really been a pretty smooth transition.
We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to visit with a couple of members of the men's and women's track and field squad. But that visit will take place when Mastodon Spotlight returns in just a moment.
Looking at soldiers and their families, citizen soldiers, members of the Army National Guard. They train part-time, building civilian experience, pursuing higher education. They serve our country and community in times of need. Join them. Call 1-800-GO-GUARD. Discover the part-time job with full-time pride.
In the Army National Guard, you can.
Welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight. Time now for one of my favorite segments of the program that we do, and that's a chance to talk with some student athletes here at the university. And this week, we are pleased to have with us a couple of members of the men's and women's track and field teams here at IPFW. To my immediate right is Mark Hopkins, and Mark is a senior academically, junior athletic eligibility-wise. And to Mark's right is Gina Pruitt, and Gina is a sophomore. Both academically and athletically, and both of you welcome to Mastodon Spotlight. Would you kindly please tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll be polite and go ladies first with Gina.
I'm Gina Pruitt, and I'm a sophomore at IPFW. Most of the time when I'm not at school, I'm either at work or doing something athletically like running or playing basketball or just hanging out with my friends.
Mark?
I'm a business major, and I'm either, like Gina, I'm either at school or at practice most of the time, or I'm at home doing homework. It's about all my time takes up right there.
For each of you, obviously, you must have participated in track and field at the high school level. Where did you compete at, and also what led each of you to come here at IPFW? Mark, we'll start with you first this time.
I went to East Noble and ran track all 4 years there, and my first year of college I was at IU and ran track a little bit there, and my old high school coach from East Noble was going to coach here, so I came to run for him, and things with him didn't work out, but I'm still here and things are great. So.
And Gina?
I started running in high school when I was a sophomore, and then I wanted to compete in college, and I got a few calls from colleges, but I met with IPFW's coaches, and I really liked them, and they really made me want to come to the school.
Now, what events do each of you run?
I run middle distance, which would be like the half mile, and sometimes the mile.
I run the 400 hurdles and the 110 highs.
A hurdler in our midst.
Yeah.
Talk about running the hurdles, because that's a combination. Obviously, it's speed and there's technique, but you've got these little barriers that you got to jump over. What led you to running the hurdles, and what's it like?
Well, actually, my freshman year in high school, I actually ran track because of a bet. And I was coming out for a high jump, and I really wasn't that great at it, and they thought my height would be good in the hurdles. So I started the hurdles, and my problem in high school is now better, and I have a different problem now that I'm working on, my trail leg. But it's coming along, and there's always work to be done on the hurdle technique, but it's a lot better than it used to be. So.
You mentioned that you run the high hurdles. Did you run both high and low in high school?
Yes.
Have you done the lows here?
Yeah, I've done the intermediates a couple times here. Last year I did about 3 or 4 times, I think, and I like that better than the highs. So
what's the major difference? I mean, obviously higher hurdle, but in terms of you're going fast into the technique, is it a matter of the lowers? Obviously, you don't have to get that trail leg up as high.
Well, I feel I'm quicker in the 400 than I am the 110. I don't have that short speed, but I can hold a quicker speed for a longer distance, so that's what helps me in the hurdles.
Gina, you mentioned you run the distances, half mile, mile. What led you to run the distance as opposed to possibly the shorter sprints?
Well, when I started in high school, they started me out in sprints, but I wasn't as fast as most of the sprinters. So I went out for cross country because some of the girls got me too. And then when I went back into track, they didn't know if I should run sprint or distance. So they kind of put me in middle distance to where I kind of sprint distance, kind of. And I just like that.
A half-mile race, or what some people today call an 800-meter race, is 2 laps around the track. And the mile is 4 laps. Which of the two do you like more? And then when you run that race, what is your preferred strategy in terms of, do you like to take out early and hope you can hold them off, or do you run in the middle of the pack and hope you have a kick at the end?
Well, my favorite is the 800, and I always start out fast, and I hope to finish out strong. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But sometimes turning Division I, there's a lot faster girls, so I try to stay with one that I think runs my pace, and then she kind of pushes me at the end.
A term that the public doesn't always hear, they hear but don't always understand, is PT, for personal time, or PB for personal best. What is your personal best in both the half mile and the mile?
The half mile would be around 2:18, and the mile, I've only ran for like 1 year. It would be like 5:19.
And Mark, running the hurdles, what are your personal bests?
The 400 is 54.36, and the highs, I believe 15.5, somewhere around there.
Now, do you do anything besides the hurdles?
The 4x4. So this year is the first year we've actually had enough people to run the 4x4, so we're just starting out with that. But
and which of the 4 legs do you run on that?
It's kind of different right now. I've done the second right now, so that may change. But
what has running this season been like for each of you? Obviously, track and field is a relatively new sport here at the university, but tell us about some of your experiences, good, bad, or indifferent.
Well, this year's been awesome because, I mean, we've had buses this year, which has been a great plus compared to vans. We've had more meets this year. The first year I was here, we had 1 indoor and 2 outdoor. And this year we've already had 5 indoor, I think. And we have 6 more outdoor, so great improvement from first year I was here.
And Gina?
I really like the team this year. Last year I had one other girl to run with, and this year we have, I don't even know, like 18 or 15, somewhere around that. It's really encouraging because you have people cheering you on at meets, and it really helps a lot.
Before we go, I got to ask you the $64,000 question. What's it like running for Coach Norton?
It's great. He's always there to push you, and I think everyone likes Coach Norton. He knows how to push you and not get you mad at him.
Gina?
I think it's really neat to run for Norton because I remember him from high school and how he always wears sunglasses. I don't know why, but he always does, and it's just neat to know who he is now. I mean, just seeing him in high school, and now I know him. It's weird.
Final question, because we're just about out of time. There are still several meets left this year. Quick thought, what you'd like to accomplish yet this year?
The 400 hurdles is my main race, and I'd like to just start off the year with a good race and improve every week.
And Gina?
About the same for me. I just really want to improve my time.
We thank you for coming in, especially under the conditions weather-wise, and that we appreciate it very much. Continued success to each of you, both on the track and in the classroom, and hopefully we'll get to see you again down the road sometime. But again, thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our guests have been Mark Hopkins and Gina Pruitt, members of the men's and women's track and field teams here at IPFW. We'll take a break, and then we'll bring Coach Norton back and perhaps find out why he wears those sunglasses. But that and more when Mastodon Spotlight returns in just a moment.
This vehicle can take you to places no other vehicle can, to strange worlds and even stranger life forms. to the silicon landscapes of tomorrow's supercomputers. This incredible vehicle can take you as far as your ability and imagination will allow. But only if you don't bail out. So stay in school. This message was brought to you by the United States Air Force.
Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to put handcuffs on you, okay? For your protection and mine, okay?
Okay.
I'm going to put it in front of you so it will be comfortable, okay?
All right. Whatever you want to do.
Okay. All right. Is that too tight?
No.
Okay. All right. Okay, you got it?
Yep.
I was a liberal arts major in college.
I didn't speak a second language.
What could I?
What could I offer the Peace Corps?
The answer surprised me. I served in South Africa teaching HIV/AIDS awareness.
Working with my students in Nicaragua was a great experience. We taught each other a lot about our countries and cultures.
This is the Peace Corps today.
Redefine your world. Join the Peace Corps.
Apply now at peacecorps.gov.
Welcome back to Mastodon Spotlight. Time for us to welcome back to the program the head men's and women's track and field coach here at IPFW, Rick Norton. And Rick, I notice you've got the shades on, and in the last segment, Gina Pruitt commented about you wearing shades, and she wants to know why you wear the glasses all the time. So can you kindly answer her question?
I couldn't resist, so I thought I definitely had them in my pocket and thought, well, we'll start that out. All kidding aside, I actually am supposed to wear them anytime I'm outside. My eyes are just real sensitive to the light, and in fact, on my way in here with 8 inches of snow on the ground and no sun out, I had them on because of the glare. So I basically just have to wear them in reaction to the light, and I don't go too many places without them. In fact, I'd keep them on with the lights in here, but I think I could handle taking them off.
Whichever you prefer. A quick comment on our two guests today, Mark Hopkins and Gina Pruitt. Your thoughts on them?
You know, great kids to work with. It's really what coaching is all about. You know, I guess as a coach, I don't evaluate my success in wins or losses. It's, you know, how can you help individuals develop into being the men and women that you can be proud of, you know, as they accomplish things down the road, and then have the great feeling that you might have had something to do with that. And you know, those are two examples of that exact thing. You know, it's not necessarily the time or performance they'll leave IPFW with that I think they're going to remember. It might be their experience in the effort and the motivation that they brought to the program to reach that level that they will be able to take with them. So that to me is what it's all about, and I enjoy working with both of them very much.
Well, as we said when we visited in the previous segment, indoor season is come and gone, and now it's outdoor season, and on a day like today, when it's snowy, windy, and temperatures in the 20s, it's not exactly the right type of atmosphere for running track and field. But how has the outdoor season gone along so far?
Well, we've been on about a 6-week break from indoor to outdoor, not meaning that the team's been on a break. We just have been on a break from competition. We've gone through what we call our heavy load or gladiator phase, which is pretty much made up of the hardest workouts that the athletes are put through. The kids have done a great job. I think morale is very high. They're excited. They're ready to go. All we need is Mother Nature to cooperate, and as you can see, that's not happening right now. We've got to meet this Friday at Purdue for the Purdue Open, and there's 8 inches of snow on the ground. So I don't know how that's going to go. Now we're supposed to have 50-degree weather by Friday, so we'll just have to hope that that indeed comes around and we can actually see the track we're supposed to run on.
In addition to this meet this weekend, there are still some other meets left in the year.
Yes.
Can we talk
we've
about some of them?
got 6 additional outdoor meets. Again, I like to stay in the area I think it's convenient for the athlete. You know, my motto is get to the meet, compete, and get back. You know, I try to keep them away from school as little as possible. We try to schedule meets that do not require us to stay overnight, and that's not as a punishment as much as it is just to cause them as little interruption in their schedule as possible, because some of them are very taxed with trying to maintain a full school load, you know, 12 to 15 hours, while at the same time some of them are trying to maintain a part-time job, and that's a lot of stress, and we try to minimize that. So we try to stay in the area. We go to Purdue a couple times. We go to IU a couple times. We go to IPUI a couple times. And we've got an optional meet at Eastern Illinois that is still kind of not for sure as to whether or not we will go there. So it's kind of, you know, just in the immediate area, which is nice.
Before we run out of time, something that you mentioned to me off break and something that we have talked about in a previous show, in trying to come up with a facility for track and field here at the university, there has been some development of sorts, and can you kindly comment on the update on that?
Well, when I came here 18 months ago, you know, I knew that was definitely our largest barrier, and started immediately on trying to come up with a plan to rectify that problem. And we've had some stalls in it, but here recently we've had a very strong IPFW supporter, Larry Lee, really kind of pick up a big interest on it. And you know, he's kind of really jumped on board with trying to help us get something going. You know, and he's kind of taken what should I say, a champion role in regards to motivating interest and trying to get the ball rolling again. Now, where it will go, you know, I'm still not sure, but I'm just thrilled that we've got some people taking an interest. We've got people who are recognizing the need, and you know, I've talked to Mark Pope, the athletic director, who is very much on board with the idea as well, and he's also very much aware as to the problem that's going to be caused after we have a dorm life, and we've got kids looking for something to do. The Gates area is not going to be able to really host the number of people who are going to want to be entertained through basketball or weightlifting, anything along a sports line. It's just not going to be able to do it. So it's not only needed for the track program, it's really needed for the campus in general. And you know, he's kind of said, hey, you know, let's look at this a little closer and see what we can do to really get some interest to make something happen. So and like I said, I'm just kind of thrilled that some new interest has been brought into to the environment.
I'm told that we're out of time. It goes by so fast. Real briefly, you did want to mention that if someone else is interested in helping the
Always
program,
looking for
a contact number, and if you can give out that number good and loud.
Yes, you can contact the IPFW Track and Field office at 481-5713. And like I said, we're always looking for anybody that has an interest. We have 21 different events, men and women. Feel free to give us a call. We can probably find something everybody would love to do.
Thanks a lot for coming in.
Great to be here.
And for bringing Gina and Mark in.
My sunglasses.
And the glasses as well. Continued success, and we'll visit with you again in a few weeks.
Thanks a lot, Mike.
Rick Norton has been our guest, the head coach of men and women's track and field here at IPFW. We thank Rick, we thank Mark Hopkins, we thank Gina Pruitt, and we thank assistant tennis coach Eric Burns, who appeared earlier in the program, for coming on this week. As always, we thank you, the viewer, for tuning in to see what's going on with IPFW athletics. Quick program reminder, Saturday night, volleyball returns to the Gates Sports Center and Channel 56 as the Mastodons will play host to Loyola of Chicago. So 7 o'clock first serve. Can't make it out here at the Gates Center, tune in to College 56. That's it for the program this week. Once again, thanks for tuning in. Until next week, this is Mike Moss saying have a great week and go Dons.